Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome as we start coming on in. I'm Nick Perro. This is Sick of This Shit Publications. I'm joined by my good friend, Walter Ryan. And today, for our Diogenes Club, we have a special guest. We're hopefully going to have a second special guest join us, but we've at least got our first special guest today is Chris Bennett, U.S. congressional candidate, California 3. We are excited to have you today. So, Chris, first off, Walter, good afternoon. It's good to see you, my friend.
Great
Glad
to
you're
see
here.
you.
And then, Chris, do you mind introducing yourself before we get into anything today?
Absolutely. So thanks for having me. I'm Chris Bennett. I'm a disabled Army veteran, former officer. I have a leadership background in computer science, data analytics, cybersecurity, and a Master of Business Administration from UC Berkeley. And I was inspired by my parents to go to the United States Military Academy at West Point and by Bernie Sanders to be a change maker with a better vision of the future. I'm part of a growing movement of people fighting for people, not billionaires, an economy where our basic needs are met, including Medicare for all, the codification of reproductive and human rights, and an end to needless violence. In short, our campaign is really about organizing for social, economic, and environmental justice. I'm proud to say that our campaign is the only one in our race that's actually trying to build real grassroots people power. We have hundreds of organizers and volunteers across the district who all understand that hope is not just a slogan. It's the feeling that we can have what we want and need if we actually put in the work to make that hope a reality. So I'm excited to be here. I'm running for Congress in California's 3rd district, which, following Prop 50, looks like an elephant. It covers parts of Sacramento County, eastern suburbs of Sacramento, goes north and all the way east to the border of Nevada with the Lake Tahoe region inside of it.
Perfect. Let me just say, this is the second time I've talked to Chris, and I always just like to start these. Thank you for you're walking the walk. You're coming and talking to real people. And I really, really appreciate that. I want to emphasize it every single time because for too long, our government, our representatives have been distant from us. And it's just so important to me. It warms my heart that you take the time to talk to us. We're regular people. We're dads. We're just working class. And this is what we need. Can you give us your webpage real quick right at the beginning so that people can find it or listening to the audio?
Yeah, it's bennettforca.com. That's BENNETTFORCA.com.
Perfect.
And I'll make sure, because I just pulled up your webpage, I'm going to add it as a QR code here for everyone. So everyone can go see it. I'm going to replace our current QR code here on the screen. So next to my head, right here, above my finger, go to the QR code, Bennett for CA, and check out what he's doing. Check out his policy platforms. If you have the ability to donate and you like what he says today, try and donate to his campaign and support him, because it's an us effort to win democracy. It's a community sport. And it's really good to have you. I'm also an Army veteran. I am a former senior DevOps engineer and worked on pipelines and background deployment systems. So you and I probably could have a really geeky talk at some point.
You spent some time at Fort Gordon, I assume?
No, I did not actually. I was on the Intel side. So
Fort Meade then?
No, I was actually at JBLM.
That's where I spent most of my childhood, actually. My parents were both air defense artillery officers. They were stationed
It's fantastic. It's a great area.
It's real expensive now.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is expensive.
A lot of people out. So let's talk about that a little bit. Everything is more expensive now than it was, let's say, 2 months ago. I'll estimate 68 days, roughly. Everything was way less expensive. I filled up gas yesterday, and I live in Northwest Arkansas, and so my area tends to claim to be cheaper than others. And it was $70 to fill up my tank of gas. And 2 months ago, it was closer to 50. And I thought that was expensive. You live in a much more expensive part of the nation than I do. How is that affecting you and those in your district? And what will you do to fix these types of issues so that we're not relying on the whims of a wannabe dictator to price our oil and then have markets just fluctuate the way they are? What will you do to prevent this type of action when you get to Congress?
Gotcha. So how will I solve the economy and endless unjust forever wars and dictatorial powers
Just an easy question.
consolidated in the hands of one
3
person?
minutes. Yeah, tell us.
3 minutes. All right, talk without giving us a 12-point plan. What is your
Just being
key
willing
plan?
to try. Just being willing to
Yeah.
try is
So,
all I'm
I
looking
mean,
for. Yeah.
like what? So I have a business school degree from UC Berkeley, and I actually understand economics. And I can tell you that instability is a huge cause of inflation, along with price gouging from companies that are trying to take advantage of the fact that things are scarce and people are worried. So we know that that's one aspect of things. But obviously, the 900-pound elephant in the room is the fact that we just started an illegal, unjust, forever war against a country that literally has the ability to cut off a fifth of the global oil supply. And a lot of people don't understand that, even though we love to talk about renewable energy and fighting climate change, oil and gas, like fossil fuels, are basically the core inputs to every single good and service that exists in the economy. We have done very little to move away from fossil fuels, especially because fossil fuel companies have been putting literally decades of propaganda out there to undermine belief in it. Yeah, so that means fundamentally that by restricting a fifth of the global oil and gas supply and even a lot of the fertilizer supply, we're en route to having just massively inflated prices across the economy. And there's the potential for global famine, actually, which is the more horrifying part of what's happening. And that's to say nothing about the Gulf War syndrome that we're almost certainly going to be giving to people that live in Iran, which we saw obviously during the Gulf War. The fact that we're blowing up oil fields, all of those toxic fumes and chemicals are now polluting the air and dropping down onto people's homes and their families. So that's, the macro overarching problem that we're seeing right now. And that was caused by the fact that Congress has divested all of their powers to the president over the last 200 years, where we literally fought a revolutionary war to not have to pay taxes to a king, where we felt like we didn't have representation. And now we're literally trying to basically recreate a king. And we've seen this as something that both parties have colluded with, where they voted not to overturn the War Powers Act. So that is one big problem. Now, for people in my district, it is getting very expensive. California has a different rate of inflation than most of the rest of the country. We do get paid a lot more, but we have to pay a lot more at the same time. There's a lot of propaganda, especially from like where my family is from in Texas, like California is a lawless hellscape and everything there is evil and no one wants to live there. And it's not really true, because like 1 in 8 Americans live in California. It's like one of the most American places you could possibly be. But where I live in the North Sacramento area, it's more than $5 a gallon for gas. And for the more rural areas of my district, it's like $6.50 a gallon for gas in some places. So people who drive like these giant gas guzzling pickup trucks are spending like more than $200 to not even fill up their whole tank, which is obviously putting a huge strain on people. And I will say that a lot of the MAGA paraphernalia has mysteriously vanished, increasingly over the last several months. So a lot of people are like, hey, this is actually affecting our bottom line and we can't afford things. So for me in Congress, big thing is that I oppose unjust, endless, forever wars. I support the Constitution. I support accountability. I'm part of a grassroots coalition of more than 150 candidates across the country. We call ourselves Courage Candidates for Citizens Impeachment, who have all agreed to sign articles of impeachment on day one in office, because that's the bare minimum to maintain any semblance of democracy and accountability in our country. And the president is literally pissing on the Constitution every single day with all the stuff that he's doing. But I'm not going to lie to anyone and say that the president is the cause of all these problems. We got here because of policies supported by both political parties for decades. And we fundamentally need to change our system and make it so that this kind of thing can't happen again. So that means, actually amending the Constitution to take away powers from the presidency, because even the powers that are in the Constitution are too much for one person to have. It means overturning ridiculous and disastrous Supreme Court precedents that have been bastardized by this activist Supreme Court filled with conservative judges who believe in this fan fiction ideology of what the founding fathers would have wanted from 200 years ago, as if they didn't actually want it to be, the Constitution to be a living, breathing document. So there's a lot of stuff we can do, but I think first and foremost is we got to stop allowing our resources to be extracted by the military defense industry and by the fossil fuel companies and by, these billionaires who in many cases are also human trafficking pedophiles, who are literally destroying the economy and dumping all of the costs onto Americans and people in the global South.
I think This is
Hallelujah.
Walter. I love seeing your hands go up. I think this is a great opportunity for
Oh,
us to
good,
bring on
Alex.
our
Woo.
second guest,
Nobody can
who
hear
is another candidate with us. Is Alex Rickling. Is my saying your last name right?
Yes, you are. Can you hear me
Awesome.
well?
Yep,
Yes,
you're
we
perfect.
can. Alex,
All right, great.
welcome. You are also part of this coalition of candidates who are on day one ready to impeach. Can
Yes.
you talk? Can you introduce yourself? And I don't know if you and Chris have met or spoken before, but I know you're part of the same network, and we want to make sure that even if you haven't spoken before, now you have. Welcome. We're trying to
in some group
introduce and
chats
build this
together.
coalition.
I don't think we've sort of personally spoke, but we've been on some group chats and some calls. I'm Alex Rickling. I am running for U.S. Senate in Massachusetts. I am a dad, a local volunteer, and a former history teacher. And I am running because Democrats in Washington are not showing any signs of using history as our guide for how to handle this moment. The fundamental reality is that everything about this situation that we are in is incredibly precedented. We are in no way the first country to go through anything about what we are going through right now. And we need to be looking at what has worked and what hasn't in how we approach this moment, how we get ourselves out of it, and how we make sure that when Democrats are back in power, we are preparing ourselves for to never get back in a situation like this again. And I see no signs from the establishment Democratic Party that they are doing any of that, that they are centering any of that. So I am taking on the longest serving Democrat in Congress, who I freely admit is one of the better Democrats in Congress, but that's a low bar. I am taking him on because I think that even the best are not doing good enough right now and are not paying enough attention to history in how they approach this moment and how they prepare for what's next. So I am a member of Citizens Impeachment. One of their courage candidates, I should say, Courage for Democracy. And one of the things that we have to do is impeach and remove the president. And it's not just about impeaching and removing the president. It's about accountability. It's about establishing that there are consequences when you use your government position to violate the law, because that's not been the case for the last decades of American politics and in American life. And part of why the moment that we are in is so bad is because everyone currently in government knows that the only consequence that they can face is if they cross Trump instead of legal consequences for their criminal actions.
Oh, this is so perfect. And I just want to add, we got an economist and a history teacher, and it's just like people that are actually qualified to have opinions on things. And what really makes me upset is that the entire media, and I want to get back to the messaging because Chris, you mentioned, and I know you're a little bit shorter for time, so we'll turn it to you, but you mentioned the propaganda out of Texas, and we're constantly up against this. Like the American people make bad decisions when they vote because they're subjected to constant bad information. It's basically all media sources at this point. Nick and I have to scratch and fight for every viewer, where there is all this money funding all these other platforms that try to squeeze us out. And then, we are subjected to algorithmic erosion while other things are lifted without merit. And again, I just want to emphasize again, Alex, thank you for walking the walk and coming here and talking to real people. That's what we need. But it's like, I hope the people watching recognize that when you go onto other platforms and they're just talking about whatever Marjorie Taylor Greene just said about lasers in space or whatever, you are literally, less about how you're losing power just by listening, not just to that article or that interview, but for engaging in anything on that whole platform that promotes this kind of stuff. We need to talk to people that actually have a basis of merit and who know how to fix problems. So, Chris, what are your thoughts there about reforming our media?
Ever since the Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act of 1996, they cleared the way for media to basically turn into monopolies, completely consolidated across the board. And that has been to the detriment of literally everyone. We are in this media ecosystem where if you actually watch like CNN, Fox News, CBS, doesn't really matter which one. You are literally, it's like you're watching a reality TV show. Like our entire political system has been turned into the worst kind of reality TV show imaginable. And people who still watch them, they literally don't even know what's actually happening on the ground or in reality. And that's been one of the biggest goals of giant corporations and monopolies and the people that bankroll and profit from them. They wanted to basically create these individualized information ecosystems for people to live in where they don't know anything that's happening. They're only being fed information directly from an approved source. And like nowadays, it's like basically state propaganda. And the consequence is that when we meet people out and about, in a lot of cases, like they have some pretty wacky beliefs about what's going on with zero evidence to back it up besides outrage, media, and marketing that is really just poisoning the discourse for most people. So for us, like I truly believe that one of the worst things the Democrats have done in the past was basically call Republicans names, you know? Like when Hillary Clinton called them a basket full of deplorables, I think that combined with, you know, a decade and a half of propaganda against her really tanked her chances of winning the presidency and gave us the rise of authoritarian fascism in this country for the first time. And I'm even still hearing Democrats today where we're calling it like a team sport. It's like, this is not a team sport, right? This is people's lives. This is our future as a species, as a society, as a government. So what we really need to focus on is going back to the basics, right? Focus on the policy, talk to people out and about, meet them, understand what reality they're living in, and then focus on the common ground without getting caught up in these culture war BS issues, because that is really what they're designed to do, right? Keep us mad at each other so we don't get mad at the people who are actually responsible. But while we do that, we can't sell out our values. That is the other thing that the Democrats have done in a lot of ways, where we gave up on immigration messaging and decided to lean into racist narratives. And now a lot, like an overwhelming majority of the public has these terrible, outdated, and incorrect views of immigrants. You know, like immigrants are overwhelmingly positive for the economy. They pay taxes, they get no benefits in return, they do jobs that Americans don't want to do, and they also are overwhelmingly less likely to commit crimes. And every time the ultra wealthy destroy our economy, the first people they blame are immigrants and now trans people and other marginalized communities. So we really need to actually counter message. Like that is the role of the opposition party. But going beyond that, we also just need to bring back independent media like PBS and make sure that outlets like you all and what we're seeing on like Substack and other places like Democracy Now! Are able to thrive. And that means that we have to really lead into our grassroots organizing capacity and just build up the alternative power structure that's going to be required for us to actually defeat authoritarian fascist oligarchy and consolidated corporate media.
So building on that incredible answer is you both are running two different campaigns. One is, Chris, you're running for the House of Representatives, and Alex, you're running for Senate, both of which in the primary are probably more focused on your party itself, the actual named party. However, we're in a period of country over party. In my eyes, this is not an election of Democrat versus Republican. This is an election of, do you believe in America as a democracy, or do you believe we need to be a fascist authoritarian state? And what are you guys both doing to reach across what would be considered the traditional political aisle to make a new political aisle? Because this is a coalition that we're building, and it has to be from the people and not from the money or the who the Democrats label as the people. It has to be from all of us. And so how are you both going out and engaging either voters who are registered Democrat and who didn't vote in the last election cycles, say since Trump got first elected? How are you engaging them to get them reactivated so that you have a larger voting base for the primary and a coalition behind you ready for the general?
Sure. So, you know, for me, the reality is that the majority of my volunteers are independents, not registered Democrats. Because, and I think that's in part because my message, my core concept is about the fact that the federal government is broken. Yes, I am politically on the left. I would enter as one of the most left members of Congress. How, we don't have to get into specifics, but I would be one of them. But my platform the whole message of my campaign is that right now the differences between me and Senator Markey and Representative Moulton, or between the three of us and Joe Manchin, John Fetterman, pick your centrist, even Lisa Murkowski, the differences between us don't really matter right now because none of us can accomplish our goals. Mm-hmm. And we have to address the systems that are blocking all of our policy ideas first. And then once we've done that, then let's go back and let's have those policy debates. I want to have those policy debates. And if I lose them in the court of public opinion, then don't send me back. But I think that is sort of a very core element of how I'm addressing this campaign. And centrists, some Republicans, non-MAGA Republicans, sort of more moderate Democrats, all of them can agree with the idea that the federal government isn't working properly and it's not achieving progress on our goals, even when Democrats have power. And so I think that there has been some resonance on that point. And so that's been really core to my message. And I think that has helped with bringing in appeal and that's spoken to the fact by most of my core volunteers are not registered Democrats, or at least weren't when they joined the campaign.
Perfect.
I know. How about you, Chris? Because sorry, Walter, before we introduce Eric. Hey, Eric. Chris, I know you've got a couple more minutes with us, so I want to give you the floor for this answer too, to pass it over, and then we'll bring Eric more into the conversation. Gentlemen, this is Dr. Eric Lulov. He is a wound care specialist. He is an expert. He's an amazing person and does a lot of really good writing around healthcare policy and what's going on with the technocracy and how they're taking over the healthcare system. And so, Chris, I'll hand it back over to you about the crossing the traditional aisle and forging a new path forward.
Sure. So, maybe my analysis is a little bit different, but I personally think that the aisle doesn't really exist. We, in a lot of ways, have uniparty when it comes to corporate interests. Ever since Bill Clinton took the Democrats into being the second party of business in the 90s, we've been on this rapid slide towards fascism because, Nazi Germany taught us that as long as people are still making money, the corporations have no problem working with fascists. And so the end result has been that in a lot of cases, the Democrats in Congress, the corporate ones, take money from the exact same people that are funding the Republicans. And that's why, even though Trump bombed Iran last year without congressional approval, for example, my opponent voted not to impeach him, right? And it's because he's taking AIPAC money. So one of the biggest things that we've been seeing in my region is that the fastest growing party of registration in the Sacramento and the greater Northern California area is independent, like no party preference, because Democrats have failed to meet this moment. And because we are so entrenched with private health insurance companies and the military industrial complex in so many ways, people are like, I don't want to call myself a Democrat. Like, it is so uncool. It is so it's just against the things that most of us agree at a baseline, that we should respect human rights and human dignity, and that people are more important than, some private equity billionaire being able to make some more money off of us. So the way that we've been building coalition is by really just being unabashed about the fact that we don't take corporate money, we don't take federal lobbyist money, we refuse to ever take foreign lobbying interest money like AIPAC. I've been endorsed by Citizens Against AIPAC Corruption. And we also have been unapologetic about calling it a genocide and saying that we're against war crimes being paid for with our tax dollars and weapons in Israel and Iran and Lebanon, because most of us realize that, hey, $1.5 trillion being spent on the military is not doing anything to help Americans. And it's not even going to the troops. When I was a captain in the Army, I had soldiers literally living on food stamps in black mold infested barracks. And then we have these contractors that are charging $1,000 for a screw. We can't fix our own equipment because we got to call some asshole in a pickup truck to come and do it for us, who happens to work for a private defense contractor. So like really, it's really about the fundamental allocation of resources, which what economy actually means. You're just completely optimizing and allocating things in such a way that doesn't make any sense. And literally it's like, don't believe your eyes, listen to my words. And once you actually just start calling out the truth, people are desperate for something like that. But it's not enough just to say what's bad. You also have to give people hope.
Yes.
Right? Like we're all mad, we're all upset. But if we don't have any kind of semblance of hope, then no one's going to want to get excited or to get involved. So it's really also about threading that needle between being like, yes, these are real problems that we're facing. But at the same time, we can't lose sight of the fact that we're all human beings. We all want what's best for the future. And we need to focus on our common ground together. So in terms of compromise, like I don't believe in compromising with someone who's operating from a place of bad faith. But if we agree on the outcome, then we can compromise maybe when it comes to how to get there. But if you are working together with a fascist, then you are a fascist collaborator. And that's not really going to work for me because I like to say the biggest anti-fascist organization in United States history was the U.S. military. And I was a veteran, so no thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Chris. That's so fantastic. Eric, I want you to get a point to say hi before you jump off with us. I know.
Hi guys, I'm so sorry I popped in 25 minutes late. I'm in Bremen, Germany. I'm finishing my meeting out here. I was lecturing this afternoon and this morning and last night, and I'm just like bone flat, jet lag, exhausted. So what you're hearing, and I don't know if you guys can hear the church bells in the background here, but it's 7 p.m. here, so it's just the old church here is gorgeous, and but it's still Germany, and they hate Trump, and they have no love lost for this administration here. And I'm at the European Wound Management meeting. So these are pretty much everybody most of the people here are from Germany. So I've at least secondhand smoked at least 6 packs the last 3 days. And I feel like really unhealthy. And I have to go back inside because I have my my currywurst just got delivered at the table.
Ooh,
so I and then so guys, I just want you to understand they've done this already here 80 years ago. Okay, they've been through this whole neo-fascist shit 80 years ago, and it didn't work then with their eugenics, which is what we created and sent over here. They borrowed it from us, and it's happening again, and it's buried in the HHS. And if we don't all wake up and realize that we are just about as fucked as the German people were in 1933.
Yeah,
because it was still the military-industrial complex with the with the plutocrats back then, and nothing's changed. It's the same playbook. We're not dealing with the smartest people on the planet. We're just dealing with the most evil people on the planet. And the only way we defeat evil is to be better than them, and is to vote so it's too big to rig.
Yes.
And flip the switch and make them accountable, just like they did in Nuremberg in the 40s. And we need to end this shit today. And after being in Germany here and seeing how the European people really are tired of it. I mean, they are stressed out because of jet fuel prices. Gas is literally, when you convert it to liters to gallons, it's about 3.8 liters per gallon. Okay. They're paying almost $8 a gallon here.
Gosh. Yeah.
Okay. There's already talk about Lufthansa canceling all their short hop flights that are under 1 hour to save on jet fuel because of the shortage.
Chris has to go. I know we have to let Chris
so
go.
I'm going to get going, guys. But guys, it was nice to meet you. We'll do another show where I can catch up with everybody and we can have this healthcare conversation.
Yes,
it's great to see you guys. And I'm plus 6 hours, so it's and I gotta tell you, it is bone fucking cold here. I am so can't wait to get back to. I can't wait to get back to South Florida. It's so fucking cold here. I am not used to this weather. It was raining all week. It was like cold and raining, which is like the worst. But anyway, you guys take care. Thanks so much, Nick, Walter. Arrivederci. Auf Wiedersehen. And ciao.
So, Chris, we'll let you go here because I know you've got another interview you've got to get to.
I'll be creeping in on it right now. Yeah,
it has been really good to have you on with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking with you again.
Same.
Yes.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes,
Walter. And thanks for being a courage candidate, Alex. I think we need more.
You too.
have some freaking courage, especially ones who are trying to represent people. And
Yes.
I also think we need more leaders in Congress. I think you do have to play a good balance between advocating for what is popular and popularizing things. But, to me, leadership, it's about showing up. It's about listening. It's about doing the work alongside the people you're supposed to represent. And most importantly, it's about making sure that everyone has a shared vision of the future that they can explain in their own words to know what it is that we're fighting for. And so I'm excited to work for you in DC, although I'm not excited to have to fly in our current air traffic control nightmare hellscape. Literally, I went to the Army Navy game in 2024, right before the Trump election. And a month later, airplane crashed into a helicopter. So that's the one thing that I'm really not looking forward to after winning.
No.
Anyway, thanks so much for having me, and
Thank you,
see you all around.
Thank you, Chris, so much for being here with us.
Can I hop in and speak
absolutely.
on two things that Eric just said? So Eric talked about sort of how Germany came back from this, and part of how they did that was accountability.
Yes.
Part of how they did this was by aggressively saying what just happened was bad, and a series of immediate aggressive reforms. And one of the things that we need to be doing here in Massachusetts and around the country, you need to be asking your local candidates about this, is what, a knock on wood, I feel optimistic, hopefully that we have power back in 2029. What are you, candidate, going to be doing to make sure that we are prioritizing a quick raft of reforms to prevent something like this from happening again? Because that raft of reforms is going to be fundamentally important to making sure that we are able to move on. And I have very specific ideas as to what I think those need to be and which ones we have to prioritize. But, it's been said that I'm not necessarily right about 100% of everything. It's okay if people have other ideas about which we need to prioritize, but we have to do something. We can't jump in as much as housing is a crisis, as much as healthcare costs are a crisis. If we try to skip the work of fixing our democracy, then we are setting ourselves up for much bigger problems long term. And to something that Chris was saying, if we don't fix our democracy long term, then the corporate interests are going to break whatever healthcare reforms we pass, whatever housing reforms we pass. We are not going to be able to make enough progress, and we are setting ourselves up for problems. And the other thing that he said, too big to rig, was the phrase he used. Viktor Orban just lost in Hungary. He had rigged election after election.
Yes.
What finally happened recently is he lost by too much to rig.
Yes.
And so again, what Eric was exactly right. We need to run up the score. We need to win by a lot. This is not a time for symbolic third-party voting. I hate that we live in a two-party system. Part of the reforms that I want to institute are reforms that will make third-party candidacies more viable in the future.
Yes.
But that's not where we are right now.
Right.
And right now, we need to make sure that the not Republican Party, which the way the media and money works is there's only one party that is that, wins by enough of a margin that they can't deny it, they can't rig it, that it is undeniable that we have been swept into power. And so I wanted to jump off of those 2 points that Eric just made.
That's fantastic. And I just love that we're actually having conversations about the fact that our Republican Party, they do things like the SAVE Act, they gerrymander, they try to dismantle the mail-in ballots. All of that is cheating. And it makes me very angry that our Democratic Party refuses to just call them out for cheating, and they call them out for their lawlessness. And exactly as you said, it's like we shrink away from accountability when they're clearly violating the law. And because the Democrats shrink away from those statements, the Republicans are able to present themselves as the party of law and order because they say that and nobody laughs at them or points out all these things that they do wrong. So, I mean, going forward, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, on election integrity? And I mean, yeah, the importance of us being out there, but also just making it easier, because I know the Democrats, they like to manipulate their primaries. They make it hard for people to get on ballots. And this is stuff we have to fix too. We need to listen to the people party.
Yeah. Look,
that's a big one. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
It is so eye-opening and frustrating.
Yeah,
to be experiencing how difficult the Democratic Party makes it for challengers, and I don't get it nearly as bad as some of the other candidates around the country. You know, the example, I think I mentioned this when we spoke last time, Walter, the example of what's happening in North Carolina and what they're doing to a Democratic candidate who won her primary, and the way in which the Democratic Party is even shoving her to the side is just so gross. And, you know, I have experienced the institutional roadblocks that are deliberately set up to make candidacies like mine harder. And especially earlier on in my campaign, I experienced some sort of soft pressure trying to get me to not do this. As the campaign has continued, they've laid off on that a bit. But it is bad and gross, and the Democratic Party shouldn't do that. It is an example of the Democratic Party not living up to their values. And it is part of why candidates like this are so important, because I do think that we do have literally hundreds of candidates at this point around the country who want to be a part of that change. You know, Chris was just here. You know, there are several other in California with Nick Carjuna, Hunter Miranda, a whole bunch of others. Ortega, I believe, is another one. There's several in New York. There are several in Connecticut who have a horrible time getting on the ballot in Connecticut.
Yes.
But those obstacles, that is something that I think we're going to have to try to work to address.
Yes.
You know, one problem at a time, I guess. It is something that we should address. It is an example of Democrats not living up to our values. It is something that voters are right to be frustrated with the Democratic Party about. It's not something that we'll be able to fix between now and the primary, but it is something that we should be trying to do.
Yeah.
So building on that, there was a great comment from one of our friends in the chat, Naida, around America has always been the way we are. In a lot of ways, I was taught growing up that America always teetered on the edge of authoritarianism and democracy. And we were that razor's edge of staying balanced between the two. And that's bad. We shouldn't be on a razor's edge of fascism and authoritarianism. And we have historically treated minority groups in this nation horribly.
Yeah.
Black people were considered 3/5 of a person. We have enslaved folks. We have put people in concentration camps. We have done our own genocide of the native population as we expanded across the nation itself. How do you, and this is where I build on this question in terms of voting and encouraging folks to become part of this system, is we have also stopped increasing, and I know you're a Senate candidate, so this is what you would be voting to approve this type of law and not making this. We have a proportional, we have the Proportionment Act of 1929, I think it is, where we set the number of Congress to of the House of Representatives to 335 members, and it has not changed since 1929, nearly 100 years ago at this point. We have been at the same number of representatives for nearly 100 years. And my thought is that has allowed gerrymandering. That was one of the first big death knells to our current system, where gerrymandering became worse because we never continued the size. Please push back.
I want to jump in. So you're getting at uncapping the House, which is, I think, a good idea. And it is something that you're more likely to get Senate support on than House support, because it doesn't decrease our power. It decreases the House's, an individual in the House's power. There are a lot of primary candidates, challengers, who are saying they are willing to do it. You're going to have a much harder time getting already seated people to do it. So another good reason to support primary candidates. There are, again, I don't know if it's at hundreds, but there are dozens of primary challengers around the country who are supporting this. I do have to jump in, though, on the gerrymandering point, because this is something that people actually get wrong. Okay. There are very good reasons to uncap the House. Gerrymandering is actually a reason not to do it. If you uncap the House, you make gerrymandering easier, not harder.
Interesting.
If you have smaller districts, then you have more opportunities to gerrymander. You have more opportunities for people with really advanced maps and advanced statistical analysis, and especially as AI gets more capable, you're going to have some good AI systems built specifically for this purpose. And so uncapping the House without protections banning partisan gerrymandering actually will increase the risk of partisan gerrymandering and will increase the risk of racist gerrymandering. It is still a good idea to uncap the House, but we have to be aware of the fact that
I love this.
There are a couple of things like this where there are some popular ideas out there, but we have to do them well. We have to think about the whole system and how we are solving this problem and making sure that we aren't creating new problems in the process. Uncapping the House is good because it increases direct representation. And if you uncap the House and pair it with a couple of other reforms, my personal favorite slate is to uncap the House, pair it with multi-member districts and single transferable vote, sometimes called proportional ranked choice voting. Same thing. If you pair those together, then so you end up with something like, one district that would have 4 or 5 members representing it. That system actually makes gerrymandering almost impossible and guarantees more representation for women, for minorities, for racial minorities, for LGBTQ plus communities, for all kinds of communities. You end up with much more fair representation in a multi-member district, single transferable vote system. And that is something that is only possible if it's paired with uncapping the House. So there are multiple things you can do with uncapping the House that are a good idea. But if you don't go to multi-member districts and all you do is uncap the House, then you have to pair it with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act, or the even stronger For the People Act that came before that, to ban partisan gerrymandering, or else you make gerrymandering much worse and much more problematic. A similar situation is sort of term limits is a very popular thing, and there are good reasons to support term limits. But if you institute term limits, you have to also close the lobbying loophole, which is, again, a good idea on its own. It would be it is something that we should do anyways. We should already be stopping former senators and former congresspeople from leaving the Senate and instantly starting a 10-figure lobbying job at a corporate company that they just spent years passing bills to help. That's something we should do anyways. But if we're going to institute term limits, then that becomes even more important, because otherwise you have people who are serving. Yes. They get elected at 42. They know they're only there for 12 years or whatever. And they're spending their entire governing career saying, what am I going to do when I'm 56?
Yeah.
You have to make sure to be closing that revolving door loophole and closing those incentives. There are a lot of things where we have to be thinking about the systems. There are good ideas out there, but we have to do them well.
Yes, I love this. And this is so important because so many times we propose things, people say that'll never work. Like anything we propose, nefarious forces are going to try to turn it against us. Mm-hmm. And so I just love how, Alex, you're saying, yes, we do need to do that. And this is how we have to do it in order to make it work. I think that's great. I also want to get back to what I wrote an article this morning, and I've come to the conclusion that a lot of our problems in our society is just that we have this idea of denying personhood just as a concept. And we need protections in the Constitution was written by slave owners. And it wasn't fundamental to the Constitution that say everybody deserves to be acknowledged as a person. And I think it starts all children, because we have so many people who view their children as their property and not as a person. And I think we need this psychological shift. And we get back to the 3/5 voting where they're like, they were deplorably calling Black people 3/4 of a person. And so we've just seen this throughout our history. And I think just more of an emphasis. It's just like a across the aisle type thing. It's just, I was listening to a podcast, like recognizing the personhood of the humanity of all people. Instead of saying illegals, we have to say people. And we just have to make that more of a point of emphasis, because I feel that there's groups, because we deny children their personhood. I think there's people who are terrified throughout their whole lives, feeling that their personhood will be revoked. And that's why they go after these other groups that they think are vulnerable. So what are your thoughts there, Alex?
I think that is the crux of Trump's argument. The whole crux of and authoritarians through time,
yes,
is vote for me and I will ensure that there is an underclass below you. Vote for me and I will make sure that no matter how bad your life is, there's always a brown person who's worse off. And it's despicable, but that is the historic authoritarian play. That is the MAGA argument. It is a play to emotion, not rationality, but it is effective. It has worked time and time again through history, and the only thing we can do is appeal to the goodness in others and say that's wrong and persuade a movement of people to agree. And I think most people do, but we have to motivate them not only to agree that that's wrong, but also to believe that we are capable of solving that problem and that we will stand by our words and fight for them and everyone else and fight for making things better. And I think that that's been one of the Democratic Party's biggest failures is not presenting a convincing case that we will be the party that adequately defends everyone, regardless of how they're polling.
So what with the power of the Senate, because being a senator comes with some really great powers to it. One of those is to impact the judiciary and the selection of judges and the appointment of judges and the appointment of folks like diplomats, civil servants in the executive, and officers in the executive branch.
Yeah.
How would you use your seat in Senate and your positions, but also the coalition that you're helping build now and becoming a part of with the Courage candidates and the citizens impeachment movement? How would you use that to influence your decision-making process when it comes to selecting judges or members of the executive who are willing to push pro-constitutional values and pro-people values rather than the current system we have, because the judiciary takes laws away. That's what we have figured out, is at least SCOTUS, who in my opinion need to be impeached and removed for their crimes that they have committed against the United States and the Constitution, is one, would you be willing to sign on for impeachment for more than just the current POTUS, to include the entire administration and members of SCOTUS, Congress, others? Would you be willing to expand on that? And then how would you use your powers to ensure that new members of the judiciary are not anti-constitutional when they come in to become members of the judiciary?
Yeah. So yes, we, at a minimum, I think that, Trump, Hegseth, Rubio have all more than demonstrated themselves impeachable and should be impeached. Clarence Thomas and Justice Alito, I think, have very easy impeachment cases against them. And in fact, impeachment articles were filed against them back in 2023. I believe AOC was the lead sponsor, and I believe there were 28 members of the House, maybe 32. I think it was an even number right around there, who were co-sponsors of that. It sort of died because there was not enough people got behind it. But I think that you could easily get on that. I think you could also make a coherent argument for impeaching some of the others based on some of the claims that they made during their confirmation hearings being dishonest. Lying to Congress is a crime. Those cases would be slightly more difficult, but if there is a case, it's something I think that is worth looking into. And if there's a case there, it is something that I would be certainly would consider. I'm a stickler for, if you violate the rules, you should face consequences for them. I don't know, maybe that's crazy. Sorry.
Such a simple idea, right?
I like the excitement, Alex. Don't apologize. That's perfect. Thank you.
No, I was apologizing for saying crazy. I wasn't apologizing for the opinion.
Okay, good.
I in terms of powers over appointments, the Senate has a lot of power over appointments and over the legislative schedule. And those powers shouldn't be abused. But Donald Trump is not nominating qualified people. And if a judge comes before the Judiciary Committee and cannot say who won the 2020 election, and cannot say that Donald Trump is ineligible for a third term, then they are de facto unqualified.
Yeah.
And it is therefore the responsibility of a senator to use their powers to halt those nominees, to halt, it is the responsibility of a senator to halt the nominee of the head of the Worldwide Wrestling Association, who oversaw and looked the other way while sexual abuse was running rampant in her company. To prevent her from overseeing an administration that she has fully intends to dismantle unconstitutionally and illegally. That's not abusing the power of a senator. That is the reason you have those powers. And so, yes, the Senate should be using the tools available to them to prevent them. And if Donald Trump wants to, at some point, change course and start just appointing qualified nominees that I disagree with, okay, I'll vote against them like a normal. But he hasn't been doing that. And until he starts doing that, we should be using more of the tools available to us to get in the way, to stall them, to delay them, to prevent them from reaching the Senate floor, et cetera. And there are so many of those tools available, and I list them on my website, alexraclean.us/minority powers. I think minority powers. And I list the powers of available to a United States senator, and how many powers an individual has, or a group of 5, or a group of 6 has, or a group of 30. Things you don't need 51 votes in the Senate to do. That they're kind of doing.
Oh, I love that. Perfect. Thank you for that answer. Exercise, because that's something that Democrats are afraid to do, is exercise the power that they have to its appropriate
that
limits.
We gave them. We gave them to
gave you
for exactly these reasons.
Yeah. And so, Alex, we've got about three-ish minutes left in our hour. I want to give you the last couple minutes here to just speak for yourself, and I'll put you full screen. I wish we could have had the opportunity for Chris to also be able to do this, but we'll have him back again. But I'll get you full screen here, and let you platform yourself and your campaign, and then we'll close out the show and say goodbye for the afternoon. First off, again, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a wonderful conversation. And thank you for pushing back so that we could have a real conversation on solutions, on why we can't just go halfway. You didn't push back to say, no, we can't do this. You pushed back and said, no, we can't do this without doing the next step too. And Democrats and politicians have been missing that key component that gets people excited. That says, yes, they're going to actually do it because they know what the fuck they're talking about. And so, Alex, thank you so much for just coming up here and talking and being yourself with us. So for the last couple of minutes, promote yourself and your campaign, and all the great things that you're doing and are going to do when you become a senator for Massachusetts.
Sure. Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Sorry, my head itches. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me on. I'll start by sort of plugging Chris for a sec, because Chris had to go. Chris Bennett for California 03. He's a good dude. He's a courage candidate. Okay. I'm Alex Raclean. I am running for U.S. Senate in Massachusetts. I am running because Democrats are not showing signs of having learned from history or using history as their guide for how we approach this moment and how we get ourselves out of it. We need to do way more to use the powers available to us to be pushing back now. And then when we are back in power, if we don't start with structural reform, if we don't start with expanding the court and major court overhaul, if we don't start with getting money out of politics, if we don't start with protecting voting rights and making elections more representative with ranked choice voting, then we are going to find ourselves back in a situation like this. And accountability for people who did wrong. We are going to find ourselves back in a situation like this or worse in the near future, and we are not going to be able to accomplish any of our other goals. We're not going to be able to accomplish environmental regulation or AI regulation or, Medicare for all or a trans bill of rights if we don't start with the structures that are blocking progress. We have to talk about the reality of how we solve problems. And I'm running because I want to address that. I want to fix problems and fix the systems that are preventing us from solving problems. If you liked any of that and liked any of what I had to say, help out the campaign. There's so many ways you can help. The easiest way you can help right now is honestly just to spread the word. Polling data in this race, there is limited polling data. It shows that very few people have heard about me, but the ones that have, like me. Half of the people who have heard of me are planning on voting for me in this election, but not a lot of people have heard of me yet. My rate of 12% of people have heard of me, 6% of people are planning on voting for me. That's way better hit rate than Senator Markey or Representative Mullen. So text some friends, tell some family members just that I exist, send them to my website. Most people seem to be liking what they hear. Massachusetts has a weird process for getting on the ballot. We have a Democratic convention on May 30th. I need 15% of the vote at that Democratic convention in order to stay on the ballot. If you are a delegate, I hope you will support me. If you know a delegate, I hope you will talk to them and try to get them to support me. If you want to help that weekend, May 29th and 30th, just holding signs in Worcester, Massachusetts, that's also helpful too. Or if you want to help call delegates in the month leading up to that, all of those are things you can do to help the campaign. Thank you. If you don't want to support me, I encourage you to support other primary challengers across the country. I think that primary challengers are going to be how we get the Democratic Party to change and to improve, and to make a more fair system going forward. So thank you guys for having me on. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. I really appreciated being here. I hope I didn't ramble too much at the end there.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you, Alex. I really, really appreciate it. Walter, any last words before we go?
Oh my goodness. Thanks so much, Alex. This is the second time we've talked. I really like you. Your integrity shines through. I like that you just know about things and I get to actually learn something, which never happens with the guys that are sitting in office at this point. So I just think I want everybody to understand the people deserve a choice, right? The people deserve a choice. And those of you out there, you can go to platforms where people are talking to these, new kind of candidates, one who actually represent us, one who have knowledge, one who treat us respectfully just by showing up, and who don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk. They come to these platforms, and we are working together. We appreciate each other's feedback. So make sure you support Nick and I and Alex, and we elevate these platforms, because the way the system is set up now, they've deprived you of choice in so many ways. They've done it sneakily. You haven't even recognized the choice has been taken from you. But we go into places where all they ever talk to is with the extreme right people. All we get is hate content. We can have rational discussions, but it's us making deliberate choices, helping each other out, telling each other about us. And it doesn't end here. This primary, whatever happens in this primary, Alex will go on to the next election, and we are not going to stop. And Nick and I are not going to stop either, bringing on primary candidates, giving people the opportunity, because these people have a right to be on the ballot, because the districts should choose, not DC. And that's what we're working for. So we appreciate everybody's support.
Thanks, Walter. And Alex, we will make sure that this episode goes out soon, hopefully before the end of the day. I have friends in Massachusetts. I know folks out there. If you in the audience know anyone in Massachusetts, make sure to send them this interview today and introduce them to Alex and get him on their radar. Let's get Alex over that. Let's get Alex to like 20% at minimum. Like, let's make it so that Alex is on the ballot without any question, where they can't question trying to push him off, or make it so that, we just want to bend our rules a little bit and be less pro-democracy for a moment. Let's make sure that people get to choose. And so thanks, everyone. Alex, thank you so much for being here with us today. This was such a wonderful discussion. Chris, and thank you for being on with us earlier. Eric, I'm glad you got to jump on with us for a couple minutes. Everyone, go have a great rest of your afternoon. I'm Nick Perro. This is Sick of the Shit Publications with my friend Walter Ryan and our guest Alex Raclean, as well as Chris Bennett and our friend Dr. Eric Lutov. This was the Diogenes Club, and we're done being sick of this shit here, and now we're doing this shit. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Talk again.